Welcome everyone to our daily reflection on the second reading from Sunday's Mass. A reading from the first letter of St. John. Beloved, see what love the Father has bestowed on us, that we may be called the children of God. Yet, so we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know Him. Beloved, we are God's children now. What we shall be has not yet been revealed. We do know that when it is revealed, we shall be like Him, for we shall see Him as He is. Everyone who has this hope based on Him makes himself pure, as He is pure. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So, St. John was a very busy man. There's a St. John who wrote the Gospel. There's a St. John who wrote the first letter, the second letter, and the third letter of John. And then there's a John who wrote the book of Revelation. Now, we don't know if it was all one person or if they were all people who were coming under the sponsorship or the tutelage or the teaching of the John who wrote the Gospel. We're not quite sure. But the same themes and the same language and kind of the same theology can be discerned in all those different books of the New Testament, although there are some serious differences as well. So let's jump into this. It begins by saying, beloved, and then it says, see what love the Father has bestowed on us in letting us be called the children of God. Well, St. John wrote this letter because there were some problems in the church that he sent it to. There were people in the church who were starting to teach false doctrines about Jesus Christ. And this is the first time in the New Testament where we have textual proof that there's been a division in the church. Those who remain faithful to the teachings that they've inherited are called the children of God, and those who have abandoned those teachings are now being called the children of the world. So there's some tension here. And he goes on to say the reason the world doesn't know us and recognize us that we're children of God is that they don't know the God whose children we are. That's pretty obvious. It's pretty straightforward. Now, we're going to see another problem that surfaces in John's church. There were people who were starting to think that they knew what the future looked like, or that they could predict what heaven would be looking like. And John is reminding those who are faithful to his teachings not to be preoccupied about the future. So that's what's happening here. He says, beloved, we do know that we are God's children, and we know that now. But listen, what we're going to become has not been revealed. Don't be preoccupied about the future, about when Jesus is going to come, about the end of the world, about what heaven may be like. Be content to be God's children now. We do know that when it is revealed, we shall be like God, we shall be like Him, for we shall see God face to face. But don't be preoccupied and don't allow yourselves to be swept aside by these people who claim to have a view of the future. Then he says, so in the meanwhile, while we live here on this earth, let's have great hope in God, but let's keep ourselves pure. Now, lots of times when we hear the word pure, we think of chastity or celibacy or sexual purity. That's not what he means here. He's talking about keep yourself pure and free from sin because God is free from sin. There's no sin in God, and as His children, we should imitate Him. So that's John teaching his community a few things through this part of the letter. Now, I think we can learn a couple of things here. First of all, it teaches us about our identity. We are God's children. Now, this is what John teaches. He teaches it in the Gospel, in the 3 letters, and in the book of Revelation. You know, St. Paul says we are God's adopted sons and daughters. We are God's adopted children. That's beautiful. But you know what? John would probably feel a little uncomfortable with that. See, John was always raising the stakes. John, if he spoke to Paul, would probably say, "Oh, sure, Paul, we are God's adopted sons and daughters." But John says, no, we are actually His sons and daughters because we are in Christ. And just as Christ is not an adopted son, but is the Son of God, John says we are God's children as well. So, you know what? Think of yourself as God's son. Think of yourself as God's daughter, and act and behave as a child of God. You know, relate to other people, other Christians, as also children of God. They're your brothers and sisters. So this really should affect our own self-identity. Also, let's try to be pure and free from all sin. I think we're going to have to call it quits now because the leaf blower is outside and they're getting the property clean and ready for the retreat this week. So try to be pure and free from sin as well. Thanks everyone, and God bless.